ہم کو کس طرح سیدانیاں دیکھیں گی بلوائے عام کو، لے چلے ہائے لے چلے۔ آخر شعر ہے، یہ ملا خورشید ان کو ہے رسالت کا صلہ، آتی ہر مستور کی تھی واحجابہ کی صدا، سن کے سارے رو رہے تھے انبیاء کو رام کو، واہ غربتا کی تھی صدا، واہ غربتا کی تھی صدا۔
آ جائیں، سلام بھی ارے آ گئے تم، چلو آ جاؤ۔ بسم اللہ۔ سوری، بسم اللہ، یا اللہ، آ جائیں، بسم اللہ، بسم اللہ۔ ایک سلام بھی پڑھ دیں ذرا، پھر یہ مجلس شہر میں میرا پر ایک صلوات بھیج دیں نا۔
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد۔
مجلس شہ میں میرا برسرے ممبر ہونا، مجلس شہ میں میرا برسرے ممبر ہونا، اور اس کو کہتے ہیں نصیب کا سکندر ہونا، مجلس شہ میں میرا برسرے ممبر ہونا، اور جس کو درکار ہو دنیا میں ابو ذر ہونا، اور جس کو درکار ہو دنیا میں ابو ذر ہونا، اس کو لازم ہے غبار درے حیدر ہونا، مجلس شہ میں میرا برسرے ممبر ہونا، اور پہلے سوئے تو کوئی چھاؤں میں تلواروں کی، وہ پہلے سوئے تو کوئی چھاؤں میں تلواروں کی، اور اتنا سا تو نہیں نفس پیغمبر ہونا، مجلس شہ میں میرا برسرے ممبر ہونا، اور ان کے ایمان پہ بھی شک، ان پہ خدا کا دھوکہ، ان کے ایمان پہ بھی شک، ان پہ خدا کا دھوکہ، اور کس طرح مان لوں دونوں کا برابر ہونا مجلس شہ میں میرا برسرے ممبر ہونا او غم شبیر نے اشکوں کی بڑھا دی قیمت غم شبیر نے اشکوں کی بڑھا دی قیمت قطرہ آب کو سکھلا دیا گوہر ہونا مجلس شہ میں میرا برسرے ممبر ہونا عمر بھر غیرت انسان کو ڈسے گا یہ خیال عمر بھر غیرت انسان کو ڈسے گا یہ خیال او بنت زہرا بلوے میں تیرا کھلے سر جانا مجلس شہ میں میرا برسرے ممبر ہونا صلوات بھیجیں فاتحہ بیمار جب کہ احمد مختار ہو گئے بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم الحمدللہ رب العالمین الرحمن الرحیم ایاک نعبد و ایاک نستعین بیمار جب کہ احمد مختار ہو گئے بیمار جب کہ احمد مختار ہو گئے اور دشمن زیادہ در پائے آزار ہو گئے او زہر ستم سے موت کے آثار ہو گئے اور صدمے اٹھا کے جینے سے بیزار ہو گئے صدمے اٹھا کے جینے سے بیزار ہو گئے اور غل تھا جہاں سے نائب داور کا کوچ ہے افسوس سوئے خلد پیمبر کا کوچ ہے افسوس سوئے خلد پیمبر کا کوچ ہے اور شفقت سے فاطمہ کو بلایا رسول نے اور سمجھا کہ اپنے پاس بٹھایا رسول نے اور جب دامن بطول کو پایا رسول نے بستر کے بدلے اس کو بچھایا رسول نے بستر کے بدلے اس کو بچھایا رسول نے او سر رکھ کے اپنے زانوئے دختر پہ سو گئے، اور راوی کا ہے یہ قول کہ بے ہوش ہو گئے، راوی کا ہے یہ قول کہ بے ہوش ہو گئے، ہوش آیا تو بلایا حسن اور حسین کو، لپٹایا اپنے سینے سے ہر نور عین کو، نانا کے غم میں کھویا نواسیوں نے چین کو، رو رو کے یہ سنایا شہ مشرقین کو، رو رو کے یہ سنایا شہ مشرقین کو، افسوس آج داغ جدائی دکھاؤ گے، اور سنتے ہیں ہم یہ سب سے ہمیں چھوڑ جاؤ گے، سنتے ہیں ہم یہ سب سے ہمیں چھوڑ جاؤ گے، اور رو رو حسن حسین یہ کہتے تھے بار بار، اب کون زانوؤں پہ بٹھا کر کرے گا پیار، او نانا گلے لگاؤ نواسے ہیں بے قرار، رونے جنہیں نہ دیتے تھے اب ہیں وہ اشک بار، رونے جنہیں نہ دیتے تھے اب ہیں وہ اشک بار، اور کیا کا غم و ملال نہ گھر دل میں کر گئے، اور جو ناز اٹھانے والے ہمارے تھے مر گئے، جو ناز اٹھانے والے ہمارے تھے مر گئے، رونے سے اہل بیت کے تھا حشر عاشقاں، اور دلوا محمدہ کی صدا سے ہوا فغار، اور گھر میں تو سب عزیز پیغمبر تھے عشق بار، اور دروازے پہ کھڑے ہوئے روتے تھے جانثار، دروازے پہ کھڑے ہوئے روتے تھے جانثار، اور سینے بھرے تھے رنج سے ماتم کو ہاتھ تھے، اور جبریل اشک بار فرشتوں کے ساتھ تھے، جبریل اشک بار فرشتوں کے ساتھ تھے، محشر بپا کیا جو صغیر و کبیر نے، اور سمجھایا ضبط کر کے جناب امیر نے، اور تدبیر غسل شاہ کی وزیر نے، نہلایا ان کو عاشق رب قدیر نے، نہلایا ان کو عاشق رب قدیر نے، او گو حال غم سے غیر تھا زوج بطول کا، او کفنا کے خود جنازہ اٹھایا رسول کا، کفنا کے خود جنازہ اٹھایا رسول کا، او بیمار جب کہ احمد
صلوات اللہ صلی اللہ محمد وآلہ. Please recite Surah Fatiha for the families of Bikhar Bangash and Ali Jafri families, marhumeens of their families, please. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Siratal mustaqim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Bismillah. Allahu samad lam yalid wa lam yulad. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, today is the second majlis by Sheikh Hilli at this Idara. Tomorrow, Saturday, the 16th of September, is the Chehlum of Dr. Athar Beg. He was the chairman of the Board of Trustees of this institution. He served this institution for almost half a century. So I request you all to please be here for his majlis. And then after that, tomorrow night, is the annual Shab-e-Dari that's conducted by the Anjuman of this institution. So please be here for that also. And I requested you all yesterday, and there was a lukewarm response. I'm going to request once again today, please, inshallah, help them financially to hold this event tomorrow. Any little amount that you can donate will definitely help. It'll take them a long way. They are short of funds to conduct the Shab-e-Dari tomorrow. So I'm requesting you all to please donate to them. Shuja is here, Hashim Himmati is here, and also I think Rida Mehdi was here. So so please do donate for their to conduct the event tomorrow. With a loud salawat, let's welcome Sheikh Hilli to the member, inshallah. Salawat. Allah. Sallallahu Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Thank you very much. Shuja, are you here? Can you bring this mic here, please, instead of this, instead of clip-on? Laga dijiye bhai.
سورة المباركة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلقه وخاتم أنبيائه وسيد رسله سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المطهرين المكرمين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. Just echo, remove the echo please. قال الله العظيم في كتابه الكريم وهو أحسن القائلين وأصدق الصادقين: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. اللهم صل. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the purification of the souls, the enlightenment of the hearts, the acceptance of the deeds, and for the hastening of the reappearance of the awaited Savior, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, enlighten your souls and the atmosphere with the recitation of salawat upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Respected elders, sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. One of the most outstanding features within the doctrines and the teachings of the religion of Islam, and especially the school of Ahlulbayt, is the emphasis that is placed in Quran and Sunnah relating to the importance of love and the connection that needs to exist between the servant and his creator, between the father and the mother, between the father and the children, between the mother and the children. Generally, the essential elements relating to the importance of compassion and love. And this stems, of course, from the leaders of the religion, those who set about the way in which you and I should deal and interact with each other. The roots of this originate from the very conduct of the Holy Prophet, Al-Rasul Al-A'zam wa Nabi Al-Akram, Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And one thing that actually stands out, many of us are aware, is the relationship that the Prophet of Islam had with his own grandsons, in the recognition that when we come to narrations one after the other, it highlights his love and his compassion towards Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. As well as who? As well as the holy third Imam, Sayyid al-Shuhada, Aba Abdullah al-Husayn salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. How many times we've come across narrations that point to the special relationship that existed between the Prophet of Islam and his grandsons, one after the other. It highlights there was indeed a special bond between them. Notice, for example, we have narrations that once the Holy Prophet of Islam was seen playing with Imam Hasan alayhi salam and with Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And of course his beloved daughter Sayyidatun Nisa was there. She was observing that the Prophet of Islam was encouraging Imam Hasan alayhi salam to what? To win this particular game that they were playing, wrestling. The riwayah in Bihar al-Anwar says that the Prophet of Islam kept saying, "Keep going, O Hassan, keep going, O Hassan." Whereas Sayyidatun Nisa looked at her father and said, "Ya Rasulullah, I see you encouraging my son Hassan, but also he's wrestling my son Hussein." The Prophet looks at her and says, "This is because next to me I see Jibreel who's saying, 'Come on, O Hussein.'" In the recognition that the Prophet of Islam realized there is a need to emphasize the status of these holy individuals, but his method of emphasizing this was relating to his relationship with them through the elements of compassion. One day he was seen performing sajda in Masjid al-Nabawi. Someone came to him and said to him, "Ya Rasulullah, that sajda of yours was something unique because we saw you sit and do sajda, then sit up, then sit again, and then do sajda, and so on. And you did this for a number of times. This was seen 5 times. He was indeed someone who would explain his actions. He said the first sajda was after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a messenger through an angel who said to me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with my brother Ali. And so I did sajda. Then when I sat down, he sent a messenger saying that Allah is pleased with my daughter Fatima. And then I did a sajda. Then the messenger came and said, Allah is pleased with your grandson Hasan. I did a sajda. Allah is pleased with your grandson Hussein. I did a sajda. Now people are wondering, what is the 5th sajda for? The Holy Prophet of Islam says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a messenger, an angel, who said to me, Allah is pleased with whomsoever loves you and loves these 4. And therefore the Prophet of Islam would perform a sajda. How many times did the Prophet remain in this particular state whereby he would carry Imam Hasan alayhi salam on his shoulders? He would indeed come down from the minbar when he would see Imam Hasan and Hussein alayhim salam entering the mosque. When he would be in sajda, in salatul jama'ah, and these young boys would come, according to riwayat, would be on the back of the Holy Prophet of Islam. We've come across so many of these beautiful narrations that highlight something much more than the relationship between the grandfather and his grandson. Something which the Prophet of Islam wanted to establish that you and I need to incorporate into our lives today. Something which is essential for a successful parenting strategy and a way of raising our children. Because when it comes to Imam Hasan alayhi salam, there is no doubt today is revered and respected around the world by many Muslims when they come to realize the special relationship that he had with the Holy Prophet of Islam and the emphasis that the Prophet had. Imagine the Prophet of Islam would say something like this about Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam is called by the Holy Prophet as what? لو كان العقل رجلا لكان الحسن. If intellect was a human being, that person would have been al-Hasan. This is what the Prophet of Islam is saying about whom? About his beloved grandson. Meaning what? Meaning that Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam embodied this idea of what? Of an individual who was the walking aql, was the walking intellect. The Prophet of Islam praises him in such a manner. But at the same time, Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam and his life incorporated the lessons from the Holy Prophet and the way the Prophet of Islam dealt with him. Meaning what? How many times have we come across the discussion relating to the family of Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam? Many of us study, for example, Karbala, the wives of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, the daughters of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, the sons of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. But if someone today was to ask us, for example, tell me about the family life of Imam al-Mujtaba, as we are honoring, remembering him on a night like this, and his martyrdom, many would probably struggle, other than, for example, one of the heroes of Karbala, this brilliant individual, the son of Imam al-Hasan by the name of Al-Qasim, salamullahi alayhi. Many of us would know him. But other than him, perhaps people may not be able to shed more light into the family of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. What I'd like to look at is the method of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam in establishing this family unit and indeed raising his children. Because no doubt in the footsteps of the Imams alayhim salam, today we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to rise to the occasion in relation to how many of us are dealing with the challenges of a tarbiyah, the idea of understanding how to bring up the children. What do I mean? Today, if you ask many parents, arguably they'll tell you that the challenges facing parents today are greater than parents perhaps 20 or 30 years ago. And no doubt, every time parents would say that we are facing new challenges, compared to how our parents and their parents raised the children. But today, indeed, the children are very easily misled, very easily misguided. Today, they're pressurized to take forms and shapes and denominations that no doubt are very dangerous. Today, the very family structure is being challenged. It's being indeed targeted. How many times today we see people who are confused? What makes a family? Is it a father and a mother, or two fathers, or two mothers, or even single parenting being encouraged by many in different societies in the Western world? The idea, therefore, is there is a much needed help and much emphasis upon the inspiration from the Ahlulbayt alayhum salam on their family structure and how they realize the challenges relating to parenting and establishing this sacred unit, which is a family. Very importantly, the question that people ask today is, when it comes to the children of the Ahlulbayt, how many do we know about them? For example, amongst the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam, you'll find the most Imam who had sons and daughters was whom? Was Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, Babu al-Hawa'id, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. Babu al-Hawa'ij, Imam Musa ibn Ja'far was somebody who's what? Who realized that indeed there was a number of challenges at that time, and he raised his children brilliantly. How many sons and daughters did he have? We are told he had 37. 37 sons and daughters. And incidentally, sometimes you hear from the minbar, and I understand that throughout our lives we may come across notions and we accept them as fact. But we have to also be open to discussions regarding some historical analysis that's presented sometimes through poetry and through dhakirin, not ulama. Please understand the difference. Because today I have heard some individuals say Imam Musa ibn Ja'far was in prison 20 years. Imam Musa ibn Ja'far was in prison 15 years, and so on and so forth. If you dig into the literature about his life, you'll find that that's not necessarily established. Because Sheikh al-Mufid in his Irshad, for example, says that Imam alayhi salam had 37 sons and daughters. Half of them were female and half approximately were male. The Imam alayhi salam most likely, according to the most reliable of historical records, was in the dungeons for about how long? Was in the dungeons for about 5 years. That is how long? Maximum, most likely 10 years, yes? Because it's not possible to have so many sons and daughters if the Imam alayhi salam was in the dungeons 15 or 20 years. The second Imam to have the most sons and daughters was Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen, peace and blessings be upon him, had 27 sons and daughters. And the third is Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba, who had how many? He had 15 sons and daughters, which of course we are told from them he had 7 who were daughters. These 7 daughters of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, there was an emphasis in the Ahlulbayt to name many of their daughters Fatima. It was a beloved name. Just like, of course, the name Ali was also beloved to the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam. Meaning what? Meaning Imam Musa ibn Ja'far had 4 daughters who were called Fatima. If you imagine, the name Fatima was something special. But how can you have 4 daughters all called Fatima? How can you distinguish one from the other? One of them was called Fatima al-Sughra. The other was called Fatima al-Kubra. Very well. How do you then name the other 2? Imam Musa ibn Ja'far said, I love the name Fatima so much, I want the third Fatima to be called Fatima al-Wusta, the middle Fatima. Now, if you've managed to arrange or understand these 3, how can you figure out the 4th? Imam Musa ibn Ja'far said, I love the name Fatima so much, I will name the 4th daughter Fatima al-Ukhra, the other Fatima. Subhanallah, yes? So he had 4 daughters. Of them, he called them Fatima. Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, also from his 7 daughters, he named 3 of them Fatima. Now, question, amongst the 15 sons and daughters of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, which individual, according to the most reliable of narrations, was considered to be the most excellent in quality and characteristics, the most excellent in every aspect according to the Ahlulbayt alayhim as-salam? This individual is whom? This individual is Fatima, the daughter of Imam al-Hasan, the wife of Imam al-Sajjad, and the mother of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhim ajma'in. And this particular individual is named by the Ahlul Bayt as the most excellent. What do we mean? Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam has this daughter by the name of Fatima bint al-Hasan. Fatima bint al-Hasan was there in Karbala. She witnessed the tragedy of the 10th of Muharram. She was able to indeed be patient when the calamity struck. And Fatima, salamullahi alayha, was the mother of an imam, a daughter of an imam, and the grandmother of an imam, and a wife of another imam. She was truly unique. Fatima bint al-Hasan had many important qualities that historical records tell us. She was a narrator of hadith. She was an alima in her own right. She was revered and indeed respected. She was loved by her husband, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, loved by her son, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhim as-salam, and indeed loved by her father, Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. And her mother was also outstanding. The mother was called Ishaq. Ishaq was somebody whom Imam al-Hasan loved also. And Ishaq was somebody that Imam al-Mujtaba said to his brother, Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, when I die, I want you to marry my wife, Ishaq. Because of her excellent qualities and characteristics, Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam later marries Ishaq after the martyrdom of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. Yes? The other individuals that indeed today we need to remember, as we remember Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, is whom? A man by the name of Al-Hasan al-Muthanna. Who is Al-Hasan al-Muthanna? Hasan al-Muthanna was the son of Imam al-Mujtaba by the name of Hasan. Hence he is known as the double Hasan. Yes. He had a son whom he also called Hasan. Hence he is known as Al-Hasan al-Muthallath, the triple Hasan. Yes. Who is the son of Hasan, who is the son of Hasan. Yes. The recognition is that Al-Hasan al-Muthanna, when it came to the day of Ashura, fought alongside his uncle, Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. He was found with 40 wounds. His arms were severed, yet he was saved. And he did not attain Shahada. Later, of course, the progeny of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam continued through him. The progeny of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam continued through him. Importantly, an individual who was the grandson of Al-Hasan al-Muthanna and the great-grandson of Imam al-Mujtaba. I know these are all names which may be overwhelming, but it's important for us to know, because the Ahlulbayt have said the second most terrifying or incident that caused them grief after Karbala is an incident known as Fakh. This happened during the time of Imam Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salam. And this was when a man by the name of Al-Husayn ibn Ali ibn Al-Hasan al-Muthanna was martyred alongside his sister Zaynab in Mecca, in an area known as Fakh, when they rose against the Umayyads. And not only were they martyred, their heads were carried into Baghdad, and their family, including this particular lady, Zaynab, was taken and enslaved. So it was a repeat of the atrocity of Karbala in a different way. And Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam talks about it. Imam al-Musa ibn Ja'far talks about Fakh, that after Karbala, this was the most terrifying or the most hurtful incident for the Ahlul Bayt. So the individual who was martyred was whom? Was the great grandson of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. The recognition that emerges when we discuss this is that the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam, you look and you compare each and every individual, there was a very uniform, common model applied by these holy individuals in raising their children. How did Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam bring about children like Fatima, bring about people like Hasan al-Muthanna, bring about individuals like whom, like Al-Qasim and others? How did this take place? Was it something that was coincidental, or was it part of a plan? Was it something that these holy individuals would demonstrate throughout their lives, would be seen by others, would be applied by their wives as well? Incidentally, in between brackets, the character of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam has been the subject of assassination and tarnishing. Many people, unfortunately today, outside the school of Ahlul Bayt, when you ask them about Imam al-Hasan, they'll tell you, yes, he was a great man. But one thing about him was that he had many wives. Because you look at many Sunni books and literature, they write that Imam al-Mujtaba had 90 wives. One narration says he had 300 wives. And if you say to me that, for example, this is only found in Sunni literature, I'll tell you, sadly, it's also found in the hadith that is attributed to the Ahlul Bayt. You might be surprised to know, and it's always important to be open about this, so that in case you hear it from someone who tells you it's in your own books. We have in Al-Kafi, we have a narration that Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi would come and sit on the minbar and say what? And would say, "Oh people, stop marrying your daughters to my son Hassan, because he is a habitual divorcer. He keeps divorcing people." This is where? In Al-Kafi. So you ask me, how is this possible? Is this narration accepted? Not at all. It's not something that we can ever accept. Because first comes the Quran. The Quran establishes the isma of the Ahlul Bayt. The Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam are exemplars, are role models. They will never be of the individuals who marry divorce. This is part of the attempts by Bani Umayyah to tarnish the reputation of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And therefore they included narrations that also found their way into our book, sadly. But no one claims that every hadith in Al-Kafi is sahih. None of the ulama come and say, whatever narration you have in Al-Kafi you should accept. That Shaykh al-Kulayni alallahu ta'ala maqamah did his best. But sometimes these narrations were later either added or by mistake included. And therefore this accusation can never be accepted against Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, because when the Bani Umayyah sought to attack individuals from the Ahlul Bayt or those around the Ahlul Bayt, they would begin to indeed fabricate and place these kind of ideas in order to deceive people. The question that I'd like to pose in this particular examination, and that is, what was the methodology of the tarbiyah of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam? Meaning what? How did he ensure that his children were raised in the most respectful, but also the way that the Quran advocates they should, so that you and I today are able to deal with the challenges? There are people today who have come forward to people like me and others, parents, fathers, mothers, who are gravely concerned. They say, we want to leave the Western world. We want to go to Muslim countries. Why? Because we see too much rainbow. Yes? If you know what I'm talking about, then it's good. Yes? The rainbow movement is everywhere. And it's impacting our children. It's impacting the way, for example, they understand what is right and wrong. There is a fear. So therefore, there is sometimes even this idea of a generational gap. There are parents today, especially fathers, who complain that my son or daughter don't listen to me. I tell them things and it's ignored. I ask them to pray, they don't pray. I ask the lady to wear hijab, she doesn't. I ask them, for example, to come to majlis. They don't. I inform them that they should go to madrasa or even late in teenage life, be somehow associated with Islamic teachings. They're not interested. I am not getting through to my children. Help. And there are many who are out there today asking for assistance in this regard. What are the lessons that we can learn from the Holy Second Imam? It's an important area that requires your attention, because there are those amongst us who are parents. There are those amongst us who are grandparents. There are those amongst us who are not even parents yet. But this journey begins from an early age, because it requires strategy, it requires planning, and it requires a visionary look in towards the future. The most important element here in this particular idea is what? Is establishing a connection. Meaning what? Meaning when you look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us a number of beautiful stories relating to father-son relationship. One of them is Prophet Yaqub and Prophet Yusuf, salamullahi alayhim. Prophet Yaqub converses with his son Yusuf. Another is Ibrahim and Ismail. Another is Luqman and his son. Another is Dawood and Sulaiman. These are all models in which the Quran presents on which how you and I should go about the discussions with our children. Many a times we look at these stories and we don't really pay attention to this element of it. But they are very important for us to indeed pause and learn from. The first question that I'd like to ask in this particular area, and that is, how did these prophets talk to their children? What was their methodology? You look at, for example, Ibrahim. Ibrahim alayhi salam is given a responsibility. He sees a dream, he has to slaughter his son. Today, when it comes to the do's and don'ts, the wajibat, the halal and the haram, when a father or a mother wants to make sure that their children practice, what do? Often, they come to the children and say, you must pray. You must do your wajibat. You must not neglect this. Do you agree? That is something that most of us are accustomed with. And if the child refuses, there is often punishment that is presented as an outcome. If the child does not practice, usually parents use the tool of placing fear in the heart of a child, that God will punish you. One brother, once I heard, was telling people, I found the best solution to make my daughter wear hijab. So he was asked, what is your tip? He said, the best way to make her adorn the Islamic dress code of hijab is through what? Barbecue chicken. So people came and said, do you give her this to encourage her? He says, no, you haven't got a clue. So what is it? He says, I say to her, if you don't wear hijab, Allah on the day of Qiyamah will barbecue you just like barbecue chicken. Notice, we have become experts in detailing punishment and giving parables. And unfortunately, that method today is not working. Unfortunately, today, people are struggling because the placing of fear and the projection of how God is in the eyes of our children is not producing fruitful outcomes. Quran tells us Ibrahim is commanded that he should slaughter his son. Allah is telling him, you have to do it. But how does Ibrahim approach this subject? First of all the conversations between fathers and their sons in the Quran start with the following. Please understand this. All of them start with Ya Bunay. What is Ya Bunay in Arabic? There is a number of ways I can speak to my son or daughter in Arabic. I could say Ya Waladi, or I could say Ya Ibni, or I could say Ya Bunay. Ya Waladi means, oh my son. Ya Ibni means, oh my son. Ya Bunay means, oh my dear loving son. Every occasion in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us when the parents are speaking to their children, the methodology of conversation must be infused with compassion and love. Always. Ibrahim uses it. Yaqub uses it. Luqman uses it. These individuals, the Quran says, will not have a conversation unless they establish what is known as the parent-child connectedness. Today, the biggest problem that we face is that people are not connected to their children. Meaning what? Meaning that they think they can impose on their children without their children having that element of relatability, but also element of bond with their parents. And this is resulting in the breakdown in the relationship or the lack of effectiveness in delivering the message. What do we mean? Studies today have been shown across 600 different studies. The biggest factor in a successful parent is the ability to connect with their children. And if they're able to connect, then they are able to get their message across. The first fundamental tool for connection is love. Is to enhance that bond through compassion, through kindness. This is the message of the Quran. And this was something that the Prophet of Islam initiated so that everyone else can learn. But those who applied it the best were the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam. Now you begin to understand that when we read these narrations that the Prophet showed love to Imam Hasan and Hussein so much. Why? Not only because they are Sayyiday Shababi Ahl al-Jannah, not only because they are Imams, not only because the Prophet of Islam is a Prophet and he loved them, because he was sending a message to the Muslims, number one, and to all humanity. If you want successful children, you must display and exhibit love towards them. You must. There is no other way. Yes? Because incidentally, in 7th century Arabia, this was an unheard practice. They would come to the Holy Prophet and say, Ya Rasulullah, I've never shown love to my son or daughter. Some will say, Ya Rasulullah, I've never hugged my son or daughter. I've never kissed my son or daughter. The problem today that exists is what? Is that sometimes parents and especially fathers, the way they deal with their children is a person who provides service. Tick, you know. I provide food for them. I take them to school or I give them a good school. I take them on a vacation. That's it. Whereas investment in that relationship does not take place. How do we, for example, see this? Spending time, playing with the children when they're young, having conversations with them, yes? Consulting them. These are all important tools. Ibrahim comes to Ismail and says to him what? يا بني إني أرى في المنام أني أذبحك فانظر ماذا ترى. Oh my dear son, my beloved son, I have seen in my dream that I must slaughter you. What do you think? I sometimes wonder if we were in the position of Ibrahim, would we do the same? Would we say to our sons and daughters, Allah has told me to do something, but I'm asking you, what do you think? Most of us would say, you know what? I have to do what Allah has asked me. No questions, no ifs and buts. This has to happen. And the Quran tells us, even without these challenges that we're facing in the 21st century, hundreds and thousands of years ago, this was the method that these individuals would adopt to ensure that their children are brought up in the best possible way. And we have this responsibility today to apply it. What do we mean? Today, are we spending enough time with our sons and daughters? Are we investing, for example, in their future by listening to them? One of the most effective tools in connection is listening. Listening means what? We allocate a time without phones, without distractions, where, for example, the father or the mother sits with their child. When they're very young, plays with them. When they're a bit older, begins to have conversations. They go out, do activities together, a walk, a sports event, for example, attending together. They go on a trip together. They show attention and care towards their son or daughter. Not only that they are providers, The parents are not only those who provide for their children, they must bring them up and nurture them to the level that is expected of them. That's why there is so much emphasis within the religion of Islam when it comes to parents, because they have this incredibly delicate, sensitive responsibility of raising their sons and their daughters. Number one. Number two, in addition to the idea of showing love through words and gifts and spending time and investing in that individual by asking them about their, for example, friends, by asking about how they spend their time, the other important Quranic tool that we will now come to see how Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam and the Ahlulbayt applied in their lives is what? Is to recognize priorities when it comes to presenting religion to our children. Please understand this very important, delicate point, because sometimes we are doing things other way around. If you have a 5-year-old son or daughter, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, what's the first thing that usually parents do when they introduce them to religion? Normally, they teach them salah. They tell them, don't do this because this is not right, and do this because this is halal, or this is good. Yes? So the first level usually is because parents are worried that their children will grow up doing things which are haram and not doing the wajib things. So they emphasize from a beginning age on things which are necessary in their understanding. Quran tells us that shouldn't take place. There's something that should happen before. I'd like to draw your attention to what Luqman does and how this is described in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ. Luqman is spending time with his son and giving him advice. Maw'idha is always there, right? He's present in their lives, not absent. You know, sometimes we have parents, their kids come to them and say, can I talk to you? They say, I'm really busy. Later. If a son or daughter of yours comes to you and says to you, I want to have a conversation, don't ignore that. This is a sign that they are craving your attention. They are craving your company. They want you to listen to them. And active listening is of the utmost importance. That shows you are concerned about them, that you care about their health, both physically as well as spiritually. Quran tells us Luqman begins to practice tarbiyah. What does he do when it comes to tarbiyah? وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ. Does he say to him, pray, perform fast? No. The first thing he says is what? يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ. Then he goes on, يَا بُنَيَّ أَقِمِ الصَّلَاةِ. Then he goes on, وَأَمُرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَانْهَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. And then he teaches him akhlaq. لا تصعر. Don't raise your voice. Yes? Because, you know, and when it comes to walking, yes, walk steadily. Don't walk too fast. He talks to him about akhlaq. He talks about fiqh and ahkam. But all after what? After establishing the foundation, the principles, the aqidah. That comes first. The problem today with some of our youth today, I'll be honest with you, yes? There is a rise in those who are opposing Islam when they're 15, 16, 17. Why? Because when they were 5, 6, 7, 8, the foundations were not taught to them. They were just being told, do, don't. That's it. And they don't know why, based on the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The moment you build that connection with Allah, that love with Allah, that respect with Allah, and then following that, the Prophet and the Ahlulbayt, then when it comes to salah and akhlaq, it flows naturally. Follows very nicely, yes. You don't need to exert so much effort, because now they've understood that I pray because I love Allah and He's giving me so much in my life. It's the smallest thing I could do to say thank you to Him. Not that I just have to pray. I don't know why, but my father and mother says if I don't pray, this will happen to me. The recognition is the moment I build that understanding that's positive of Rabbul Alameen. How do I present God to my children? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how is He presented to our children? How do I present these important role models to my kids? That determines their future. That determines whether they are able to become ambassadors of the religion of Islam. Because too many today are being influenced by these isms: secularism, feminism, liberalism. These isms today are not sitting down twiddling their thumbs. They're targeting our youth and indeed our children, saying to them, listen, at the end of the day, this doesn't make sense, so don't do it. You know, today, one of the biggest challenges we face is what? Is that when our kids are saying, if something doesn't make sense, I won't do it. Prove to me, show me intellectually how I can accept it rationally. If you don't, I'm not going to practice it. Yes? How is that become? Where did we reach? Why is it that the older generation don't say this? When you say to them, Ayatullah, this said this, they say, fine, no problem, we'll do. They won't ask many questions. But today the younger generation are resisting. The younger generation are asking many, many questions. No. Oh, excuse me, you're saying to me I have to practice this way, or the hijab is this way, or for example, I have to pay khums. No, I'm not really convinced. You have to somehow show me why this is important. And if you don't show me why this is important, I will struggle when it comes to this. Yes. I'll give you a simple example. Today, when it comes to the challenge relating to, for example, this LGBTQ movement, what is the answer that the Muslim Ummah or our scholars and teachers and others are saying we should present to our children when they say, what's wrong with it? Or they are convinced at school or others that it's natural, that people are born this way. Yes. What is our answer? The only way we can progress and strengthen ourselves as a Muslim community in defense of our principles and values is to say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it's haram, end of story. That's it. Oh, but can't we go into details? Are we born? Is there a gene? That, the other? No, don't waste your time. Because ultimately, there will always be a rebuttal. I'm not saying it's a rebuttal that's founded on good principles. What I'm saying is the only strong case that we have as Muslims is to say our faith, Allah has said it's prohibited in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet. That's our religion. People could do whatever they want. Yes, they're a society that's free. People could do whatever they want. But as far as Muslims are concerned, that is our position. Now, if the foundation is not strong for our children, if that connection with Allah is feeble and weak, when you give this argument, they say, no, I don't take it. No, not for me. I need you to convince me. Yes. And so now we have to backtrack. And so now we have to work much harder. Therefore, the invitation that exists out there today is for us to rethink how we are talking to our children regarding Islam, regarding the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regarding important lessons. And this also involves madrasa curriculums. This also involves teachers who are engaging in conversations regarding what? Regarding these sensitive issues. When it comes to Imam Al-Hasan al-Mujtaba salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, there are a number of important points that indeed are highlighted from his illustrious life regarding how he was raised and how he raised his children. Notice that when it comes to his childhood, he saw incredible amount of love from not only the Prophet of Islam, but from Amir al-Mu'mineen, his holy father, from Sayyidatul Nisa Fatima, from his own brother Imam al-Hasan, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And indeed that environment was set for him. And of course, the same can be said about Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Example is when it comes to this famous story of giving the food for 3 consecutive days. We are told that this is given as a reason for their love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إنما نطعمكم لوجه الله لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا. That they give the reason why we feed you, O orphan, O captive, or poor individual? Because of the love that we have for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It could have been mentioned that we're doing it to get hasanat, to get thawab, to get reward from Allah. Notice, if the children were raised principally on only getting thawab, on right and wrong, yes, that may not have achieved what we have seen. They were raised with the love of Allah and understanding the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala and our connection. So they were willing to give their food for 3 consecutive days, because they say that's the main reason, is because we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is how it is indeed presented. Interestingly, once someone came to him and said to him, I am looking for what? I am looking for a husband. And what quality of a husband I should be looking for? Imam alayhi salam says, زَوِّجْهَا مِنْ رَجُلٍ تَقِي. Make sure you give that particular, you marry somebody who has this taqwa. Why? فَإِنَّهُ إِنْ أَحَبَّهَا أَكْرَمَهَا وَإِنْ أَبْغَضَهَا لَمْ يَظْلِمُهَا. That the most important thing is that he, if he has true God consciousness, he will show true love. So the Imam alayhi salam is saying the father here must be completely in tune with love. You see, why is the Imam alayhi salam emphasizing this? Because sometimes in some cultures, the idea is that the father should be macho and stubborn, or should be, very, no, that's for the mother to show love. The father has to be what? Kind, strong, and be an example for their children, that I do not necessarily show much compassion, because otherwise I will not be respected or not be looked at as a role model. Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, when someone asks him, he says, look for somebody who's going to become a father who is ultimately loving. Ultimately, somebody who oozes with compassion. Then he tells people why. He says, because of this love, as a result of the love of God, God consciousness, he won't mistreat his wife and he won't mistreat his children. So the foundation of love is presented, yes, as the important prerequisite for a successful parenting model. In one particular occasion, Imam alayhi salam was talking to Muawiyah. Imam said to him, وَأُمُّكَ هِنْدٌ وَأُمِّي فَاطِمَةٌ. Yes, because there are a number of beautiful words that the Imam alayhi salam would respond. Imagine the Prophet says Imam Hasan is aql. So today, when there are people who accuse him of being weak or accuse him of being a pacifist, when it came to the treaty, the Prophet of Islam knew exactly what he was saying. He was saying if aql was a human being, it would be al-mujtaba. When he responds to Muawiyah, he responds in the most powerful of ways to highlight his strength, his valor, his courage, his wisdom. In one instance, he says to Muawiyah, your mother is Hind, my mother is Fatima. وَجَدَّتِي خَدِيجَةَ وَجَدَّتَكَ نَثِيلَةَ. Look at who your mother is, your grandmother is. Look at who my mother is and who my grandmother is. Then he says to him, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ آلَمُنَا حَسَبًا وَأَقْدَمُنَا كُفْرًا. I'm raising my hands, Imam al-Hasan would say, and I ask Allah to send a la'na upon any of our grandmother who is rooted in kufr, and any of our grandmother or our mothers who is rooted in hypocrisy. Imam alayhi salam is here saying that here the role of the mother is very important. The mother plays a pivotal role. If the mother is somebody that is indeed noble, is virtuous, is somebody that has understood her duties before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then she will become a successful individual in raising the children. In another very important exchange between Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam and Muawiyah, when Muawiyah said to him, أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِنْكَ, I am better than you. Muawiyah sends a letter to Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam and says to him, I am better than you. Yes. Imam says to him, why? كيف ذلك? How are you better? He says, people have now given bay'ah to me and they no longer give bay'ah to you. قال, Imam al-Mujtaba responds. Let's listen to the response of Imam alayhi salam. Imam al-Hasan says to him, Hayhat, hayhat, la sharra ma alawt. Never, never. You are displaying arrogance, which is evil. Yabna akilatil akbad. Remember who you are. You are the son of the person who would chew livers. Imam would immediately remind this individual that, you know what, you think you are greater, but remember who your mother is. Then he says to him, Al-mujtabi'una alayka rajulan. Those who support you are two kinds of people. Bayna muti'in wa mukrah. Some of them, yes, they like you. Some of them are forced. Then he says, فَأَمَّا الْمُطِيعُ لَكَ عَاصٍ لِلَّهِ. Anyone who is obedient to you is disobedient to Allah. وَالْمُكْرِهْ مَعْذُورٌ بِكِتَابِ اللَّهِ. And the one who's forced will be excused because they are forced. وَحَاشَى. Listen to this last part. Beautiful. Imam al-Mujtaba says, وَحَاشَى أَنْ أَقُولَ أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِنْكَ. He says, I will never say, Imam al-Hasan says to Muawiyah, I will never say I am better than you. Why? لأن لا خير فيك. There is nothing good in you for me to say I am better than you. Yes? You know, when you compare two things, there at least needs to be some commonality for us to compare. Yes? Imagine you come and bring 2 cups of water and you say, which one has more water? If one cup does not have any water, you can't say this has more water than this, because this cup does not have any water for there to be comparison. Imam says, I cannot even begin to say I am better than you, because you don't have any good qualities for me to say I'm better than you. Yes? That good qualities don't exist. Then he says, وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ بَرَّأَنِي مِنَ الرَّذَائِلِ كَمَا بَرَّأَكَ مِنَ الْفَضَائِلِ. I'll tell you one thing. Allah has protected me from any bad things as He has removed any fadila from you. Nothing is left for you. Yes. This is Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, his strength and his valor in the face of whom? In the face of individuals like Muawiyah. A key tool that Imam al-Mujtaba would utilize, where Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam would utilize, and the Ahlulbayt would highlight and emphasize, that was recommended by the Holy Prophet of Islam and Amir al-Mu'mineen in numerous occasions, is the importance of the establishment of the love that whom? Of the love towards the Ahlulbayt alayhum salam. This love that we have emphasized time and time again. If this love is not demonstrated, we're not going to see success. Meaning what? Meaning, from a young age, there needs to be this bond between the child and this holy progeny. And this bond can only become stronger with life. But how is this bond importantly emphasized? Please understand this. Many a times, when we speak to our children regarding the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam, we tell them Imam al-Hasan was the 2nd Imam, he's buried in Jannatul Baqi'. Imam al-Sadiq is the 6th Imam, he's buried in Jannatul Baqi'. Imam al-Kadhim is the 7th Imam, and so on and so forth. What is key in the discussion relating to the bond that has to be established between our children and the Ahlulbayt is to ensure that their stories are presented in a way that is relevant to the child's life. And this requires a lot of work. I can't just mention, for example, an individual and expect my son and daughter to somehow be able to resonate with them. I need to be able to present that individual in a lively way that enables my son or daughter to connect with them and to be able to relate to them in their own challenges in their life. So the Imam, the Ma'soom, becomes part and parcel of their lives. One of the objectives of ziyarah has to be this. So today, there is an emphasis to take our sons and daughters to ziyarah, to the shrines of the Ma'soomeen, but not only take them for ziyarah for the sake of gaining thawab, which is immense in those holy sites, but also to be able to make them understand who these individuals are as far as their position in their lives, and to be able to take them as exemplars. And this love for the Ahlulbayt will, without a shadow of a doubt, be a very strong immunity against deviance and transgression. I remember this Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali, who was also a companion of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, learnt it from the Ahlulbayt, learnt it from Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, and learnt it from Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali one day came home and saw his daughter consuming what? Honey, which he has not provided for his family. So he asked her, where did you get this from? She said, a man brought it, knocked on the door and gave it and said, this is a gift from Muawiyah to you. So notice, a person who does not understand the importance of connection and has not taught his son or daughter the love of Ahlul Bayt the way it should be, will not be able to convince their child when their child is having something sweet or something really beneficial for them, or as they think. Look at what Abu al-Aswad said to her. He said to her, my dear daughter, if someone gives you poison, would you have it? She said, of course not. He said, this is Muawiyah seeking to poison your heart and take away the love of Amir al-Mu'mineen from you. That's it. The riwayah says she was so upset by having the honey, she forcefully took it out of her mouth and she forcefully vomited out and said, no one can remove the love of Ali from my heart. This was a young child. This was a child who has been raised with the understanding of the station of the Ahlul Bayt alayhum salam, understanding of who they are and the position that they occupy. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Therefore, we find when it came to Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, this was something that was instilled in his family and was shown in Karbala. Because I ask you, how many sons of Imam Hasan alayhi salam were martyred on the 10th of Muharram? Many of us have heard of only one. But in reality, according to the most reliable of historical records and those who have written maqatil literature, there was at least 3 martyrs of the sons of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. And if we know, according to Sheikh al-Mufid, that he had 7 daughters and 8 sons, 3 of these sons would give their lives for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. And this was as a result of the upbringing to serve the Ahlul Bayt and to present the love of Ali Muhammad to what? Towards the masses. Who are these 3? The first is a man by the name of Abdullah al-Akbar, who is also known as far as his title is concerned, Abu Bakr ibn al-Hasan al-Mujtaba. This particular young man was amongst the first from Bani Hashim to sacrifice his life and attain Shahada on the 10th of Muharram. Similarly, we have Abdullah al-Asghar, the 11-year-old son of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, who was martyred just a few moments before Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. The narration is well heard when he left the tent and saw Imam al-Hussein all alone on the plains of Karbala. He was slaughtered on the chest of his uncle by Harmala ibn Kahil alayhi la'inullah, who shot an arrow when he was hugging his uncle Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And when we discuss Qasim, notice the sacrifice and the love that Qasim had. This does not come just by being there. This is the work of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam and the work of the mother of Qasim, who raised the children with so much respect and love to Ahlul Bayt. But they themselves had shown them this love. They themselves had shown them this compassion all throughout their lives. And that's why when it came to the martyrdom of Imam al-Mujtaba, the riwayat tell us that it was amongst the most difficult moments in the life of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. I was looking into the poison that was given by this wretched lady, Ja'da bint al-Ash'ath. The poison that was supplied to her by Muawiyah was obtained from Rome. Muawiyah wrote a letter to the Roman princes and said to them that, you know, I want this poison that works slowly and causes maximum pain. They said to him, why do you want it? He said, I want to eliminate the life of the grandson of the Prophet, who would one day, if I don't kill him, will come and take your rule. They replied, we don't normally supply poison to assassinate someone of such character. But because you say that he is coming after our kingdom, we will supply it to you. Muawiyah gave it to Ja'da and said, I will give you money, I will make sure you marry my son Yazid, and you will be looked after by me. This wretched woman would place this particular poison in a number of grapes. And you know, the riwayat tells us, Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam was fasting that day. When he attained Shahada, he was actually fasting. When he was presented with the grapes, this was his iftar. This was something that he would break his fast, and the moment he began to eat and consume those fruits that had the poison, the riwayat says, he looked at her and she kept telling him, eat more, eat more. He said to her, you have achieved what you wanted to achieve, O enemy of Allah. Because he began to feel the pain. The riwayat tells us that he suffered for a number of days at least, whilst his body was indeed disintegrating, and internally he began to have much bleeding takes place. The riwayah tells us that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam would be next to him. There would be a bowl next to them where Imam al-Hasan would be vomiting so much blood and would be in constant agony for days and days. One occasion, we are told that Imam al-Hasan was seen weeping next to Abu Abdullah. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam said to him, my dear brother, why do I see you weeping? Is it because of the pain of the poison that is spread around the body? Imam al-Mujtaba said, no, oh my dear brother, it is not because of me. I am weeping because of what will happen to you. La yawm ka yawmuka ya Aba Abdullah. There is no day like yours, O Aba Abdullah. I can see the day that the heavens will weep blood for you, that the rocks, the plants, the animals will all cry and shed tears for your musibah, ya Hussein. At that moment, the riwayah says, somebody enters the room. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam looks, and it is his beloved sister Zainab. The moment Zainab enters the room, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam covers the bowl of the blood of Imam al-Mujtaba. Yes? I wonder why Imam al-Hussein covers it. Because he does not want to see Zainab's heart broken. He wants to somehow protect his beloved sister. He wants her not to be hurt by that particular sight. He remembered that moment in which Imam al-Hasan and Imam al-Hussein were carrying their beloved father, helping him walk from the Masjid al-Kufa after he was struck. And Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen stood outside the door and said, now I walk. They say to him, why, O Amir, O my father? He said, I don't want my daughter Zainab to see me in this way. Now Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is covering the bowl. He does not want Zainab's heart to be broken. We say to him, Ya Aba Abdullah, you and Imam al-Hasan and Imam Ali wanted to protect Zainab. Come and see what they did to Zainab on that night of Sham Ghariba. That Zainab that you protected was slapped by shimmer on her cheeks. That Zainab that you tried to protect was poked by the spears of the enemies and the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad. But that ball that you covered, that ball indeed reminded Zainab when it came to the dungeons of Sham, because there was another ball that was covered in the dungeons of Sham. Zainab, when she saw that bowl being presented to the daughter of Aba Abdullah, she remembered that bowl next to Hasan al-Mujtaba, that bowl that had the face and the glorious head of Aba Abdullah, but was presented to his daughter Sakina. Allahu Akbar. Imagine Zainab, imagine Zain al-Abidin looking at that sight in which the daughter of Imam al-Hussein removes the covering and sees in that bowl the blessed head of Aba Abdullah. You know, we remember the musibah of this young daughter of Imam, how she hugged the face, how she kissed it, how she cried. But sometimes we forget that Zainab was watching this. How painful for Sayyida Zainab to see her beloved Sakina lose this world and leave it. How painful for her to see that this young daughter of Aba Abdullah was crying so many times. That's why Sayyida Zainab, when she came to Medina, one of the things she undoubtedly did was to go to the grave of Rasulullah. She went to the grave, hidden grave of her beloved mother Fatima. Then she would go to the grave of her beloved brother Hasan al-Mujtaba. I wonder which musibah Zainab informs her brother al-Hasan. Oh, my dear Hasan, the poet says, she would say, shall I tell you of the arrow in the eyes of Abul Fadl? Shall I tell you of Aun and Muhammad? Oh, when my heart was shattered when I saw your son Qasim's head split into two. Oh, my dear brother Hassan, there is no moment like the moment in which I saw Shimr kick Aba Abdullah's body, and I saw him sit on the chest of my brother Hussein.
ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. Tonight, as we remember Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba, we also ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the opportunity to see the shrine of Imam al-Mujtaba and the three other Imams in Jannatul Baqi rebuilt once again. Ya Allah, allow us to hold majalis there, ma'tam there. Allow us to remember Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam in the way that he deserves to be remembered. And allow us the opportunity to visit his grave in this world and to attain his shafa'ah on the day of Qiyamah. Ma'tam Hussein, Ya Hussein.
कैसी ये शाम आई औलादे सैयदा पर, कैसी ये शाम आई पर, कैसी ये शाम आई साजाद रहे हैं ज़ैनब से मुँह छुपा कर, कैसी ये शाम आई कैसी एक समक बेकफन है भाई का उसके लाशा, अब्बास की बहन का बाकी रखा न पेगा। अब सोच की गज़ैनब मांगे कफन या चादर, कैसी है औलाद صحیح جگہ پر بازو کہیں پرے ہے لاشا کہیں پڑا ہے زینب کی بے بسی پر قاضی تڑپ رہا ہے روکی کے بے کسی بھی فرش ایسا بچھا کر کیسی یہ شام آئی پر کیسی پر کیسی جگہ پر جو گھر میں گو کا غم بھی پیدل نہیں چلی ہے ایک دن میں وہی زینب آباش بڑھ گئی ہے پیر پہ آ گئی ہے کان گالم اٹھا کر کیسی ہے کیسی پر سجاد سے لپٹ کر کہتی رہی سکینہ احساس ہو رہا ہے میں ہو گئی یتیمہ سالم ڈرا رہا ہے نیزہ کھا کر کیسی صحیح جگہ پر کیسی جب آ گئے نجف سے جب آ گئے نجف سے بیٹی کو ملنے بابا زانوں پہ رکھ کے سریے کہنے لگی وہ گکھیاں زینب اجڑ گئی ہے کہ وہ بلا بسا کر کیسی پر کیسی گزرے گی کیسی آور مت کل سے شاخ جاگی آب گنے رات مومن یہ سوچ کر گزاری زینب کا نام لے گا ظالم کو مسکرا کر کیسی یہ اولاد صحیح جگہ پر کیسی یا حسین
یا حسین یا حسین کربلا والے ہمیں در سے وفا دیتے ہیں 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 تیر پر تیر بکھا کر یہ دعا دیتے ہیں تیر پر تیر کر یہ دعا دیتے ہیں کربلا کربلا والے اب نہ مانگیں گے کبھی پانی چچا لوٹاؤ اب نہ مانگیں اب نہ مانگیں گے کبھی پانی چچا لوٹاؤ خشک ہونٹوں سے یہ معصوم صدا دیتے ہیں کربلا کربلا والے ہمیں قید وہ قید کے سونے بھی نہ پائے آبے قید وہ قید نے بھی نہ پائے آبے قید وہ قید کے سونے بھی نہ پائے آبے سو بھی جاتے ہیں تو زنجیر ہلا دیتے ہیں کربلا گھر سے رفع دیتے ہیں ہائے نانا تیری امت میں ذرا رحم نہیں ہائے نانا تیری ذرا رحم نہیں ہائے نانا تیری امت میں ذرا رحم نہیں گھر میں مہمان بلا کر یہ دغا دیتے ہیں کربلا کربلا والے ہمیں در سے وفا دیتے ہیں تیر پر تیر بکھا کر یہ دعا دیتے ہیں کربلا والے ہمیں
السلام عليك يا أبا الحسن علي بن أبي طالب أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا أبا محمد الحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين بن علي. السلام عليكم أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي. السلام عليك يا صاحب الأسر